I need y'all to do whatever y'all need to do to get me up out of here. I can't survive like this. I can't take a shower. I can't take a shit. Hey, Dad, what's going on? What's happening in there, Dad? Justin, Christian, they knocked me out in the shower, but I'm still a man. They ain't put no semen on your nipples, did they? Don't worry about all that. I need you to get on the phone with Donald Trump, call up Kanye West. Is Jay picking up his phone? Hell no. Y'all gotta figure out a way to get me out of here today.
The rumor is Diddy got knocked out in the shower allegedly, and he's doing everything in his power to get out of jail. He working on a pardon from Donald Trump. They're saying that he didn't commit a real crime, therefore he shouldn't be doing no real time. Shawn Diddy Combs argues that freak-offs is protected by the First Amendment. Last time I checked, if you get a hotel, whatever you do behind closed doors is your business, especially if you're not killing nobody. And with all that being said, it's looking like Diddy could be on his way home soon.
Shawn Diddy Combs' defense is requesting either a new trial or an acquittal altogether. Combs was found not guilty of the more serious sex trafficking and racketeering conspiracy charges, but was convicted of transporting sex workers across state lines. Now his attorneys say his actions don't fit the crime.
What he did not call for all of the things that they put him through. The months and months of going back and forth to court. Cassie's testimony was incriminating to her, if anybody. The Punisher wrote a cheesy book and made thousands of dollars just because Diddy paid him to have sex with Cassie. The things that he's in jail for, regular people could get away with no problem. So now they're trying to figure out how come Diddy's in jail and so many other celebrities are free.
Diane, his attorneys say that the way this was charged doesn't exactly match what Shawn Combs did. And they say he's the only person who's ever been convicted of this charge, transportation for the purposes of prostitution, who hasn't benefited from the prostitution other than through voyeurism. They say voyeurism, watching other people have sex, isn't what this law was meant to address. Combs, they say, didn't profit from the prostitution. In other words, he was no pimp here. And he wasn't a John either. He didn't have sex with the male escorts. Instead, he brought girlfriends and male escorts across state lines to watch them have sex. And his attorneys say that that just doesn't fit what the law is about.
Basically, they just don't want to hold Cassie accountable for being a willing freak. She participated willingly in every freak off that she set up. She said in the courtroom that freaking off was her full-time job.
Brian, what would it take for a judge to agree to either a new trial or an acquittal here?
The judge really agreed to what the arguments, as Aaron Katersky laid out, were to be true, that the use of the Mann Act, or specifically transportation engaged in prostitution, has never been in the way it's applied here. This would be new precedent in many ways for both ways. If the judge was to agree that the Mann Act can extend to an individual who does not commercially profit from a sexual act or who does not participate in it, but it also would be precedent setting to dismiss or acquit Shawn Combs of these two charges. The other aspect of it as well would be to look at this case and say that the information that came in from the racketeering conspiracy allegations or the sex trafficking, we're talking about the force, the fraud, the coercion, that infamous Intercontinental Hotel video would have been prejudicial towards Shawn Combs if just looking through the lens of this transportation to engage in prostitution. That argument would allow for another trial. But I don't think it's going to happen at this level in front of Judge Supermanian. I think this is a stronger argument on an appeal if they bring it to a higher court.
So, Brian, is the idea that if you had just charged him with this and the trial was just about this, he would not have been convicted?
Yeah, that's the second part of the argument, that argument for a new trial. They're saying that if you had information like the Intercontinental video, the allegations of assault or coercion that would not have come in because they would not have been relevant as to, as the defense is arguing, the consensual recording of sex and transportation of individuals across state lines, that information would have not come in. And because that information did come in, it prejudiced Shawn Combs. And for that reason, or at least for one of the many arguments, Shawn Combs should be afforded a new trial.
He paid Cassie to shut up, and she still found herself in the courtroom tattletelling. He trying to get home because there's no reason for him to be in jail. When you go back and look over the trial, there was nothing incriminating that he did. They don't even have him on record penetrating nobody. It was Cassie that was receiving the penetration. We can go on and on. about this for days, but the truth of the matter, he's in jail for no reason. But people will make it a reason for entertainment purposes. He ready to come home. Allegedly got knocked upside his head in the shower, all for being in jail for not doing anything that's illegal.
Aaron, the defense is also trying to get him out of jail on bond or bail as he awaits the sentencing on this lesser charge. What's the latest on that?
Along the same lines, they don't believe that a conviction on this one count warrants his incarceration. The judge said that there is a presumption of being held without bond or bail when you're convicted of this crime, and that's what prosecutors pushed. The judge agreed. The judge also noted that Combs was violent, that the violence was depicted on the video. It was testified to by witnesses. The defense, what Brian says that none of that really should have applied to this one charge, so therefore let him out until he's sentenced on October 3rd.
Brian, the fact that the judge cited violence and that hotel video as part of the reason for keeping Combs in jail, could that help the defense with this larger argument that this other conviction should be dropped?
In some sense, yes, but what we're doing is kind of mixing apples and oranges as to what a judge can consider for bail purposes, where you're asking the question of whether or not a person is a flight risk or whether or not they're a danger to community. Judge Supermanian, looking at that standard, used the violence that he saw, that we all saw in this trial, to keep him in. But the different analysis for whether or not a charge should be dismissed applies in a different setting. That would be the apples and oranges again, where the violence should not have come in if Shawn Combs was only tried for this one charge. And so they can kind of pick and choose their arguments differently as it applies to different standards. And yes, it overall could benefit them.
They keep on talking about Diddy as a flight risk. Where is he gonna go that people is not gonna recognize him? They had him on TV for the past 30 years, and on top of that, he's had the biggest trial since Michael Jackson and R. Kelly. People know who he is from here to Dubai. They know who he is in India. He can't even go to China and hide out. Russell Simmons already in Bali. People know who Diddy is. They need to cut this nonsense out about him being a flight risk. Whenever he gets to wherever he trying to go, y'all gonna know how to find him. Whoever ordered 50 cases of baby oil, it's P. Diddy, especially if they're in a foreign country. There's no way he can go undetected. They might as well let him out of jail, because if these rumors are true and he getting knocked upside his head in the shower, he might be dead before they even release him. If they plan on releasing him, it's looking like they want him to rot in jail.
Aaron, what are you watching for looking ahead to sentencing in October?
Well, he faces, in theory, there's 10 years in prison. It doesn't seem like that's what the judge is thinking, because even though he found Shawn Combs to be a danger and kept him in jail pending sentencing, he also challenged federal prosecutors to show him cases where anyone convicted solely of the charge of transportation to engage in prostitution was given anything along the lines of a 10-year prison sentence. And the defense certainly doesn't think those cases exist. Prosecutors haven't submitted anything just yet. They're going to push undoubtedly for a stiff sentence. The judge has taken note of Combs's violence. The defense says he is already talking about a batterers program, so he can probably do that without having to be in jail for any more than time served.
Y'all ready for another bad boy reunion? I want to see how many of his ex-friends are going to show up, shaking his hand, hugging him, kissing him, talking about how much they missed him. Will Meek Mill be there? Will The Lock show up? Will Jay-Z pop out to show some love to Diddy? Will he have a welcome home party like how Big Meech was supposed to do it? Will Rick Ross be there? All the people that have been around this man that ain't said nothing since he got locked up, will they show up to show him some love? Because it's looking like eventually he's going to be home, and I don't want to see the fake friends all on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter talking about how much they love this man, how much they miss this man, because they know he still got money in the bank.
I want to break this down one by one, because the defense is claiming that this would have been a very different trial had they not had the RICO or the sex trafficking. And in some ways, they are arguing that these were a way to get in prior bad acts and sort of cast this dark cloud over him more broadly. Is that going to work for this judge pre-sentencing?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to work for this judge. First of all, I know that they're loving to talk about this in a vacuum because now all we do have is the Mann Act. But that was not the case that prosecutors took to trial. They did take the RICO. They did take sex trafficking. So all of that evidence was properly admitted. So it wasn't a dark cloud. It was necessary in an attempt to prove up those charges, which prosecutors ultimately did not. However, the defense is correct that had they just brought Mann Act charges, a lot of that evidence would have been inadmissible. But was it so overly prejudicial such that they got the conviction of the Mann Act when they shouldn't have? I don't think that that is going to hold a lot of water. And I do not think that this judge is going to toss out the case as a result.
They're trying to make sense out of the fact that Cassie had them legs wide open for whoever came through the door. Somehow she's the victim because she decided and she was willing to let strangers that she found on Backpage and Craigslist come through and hit that butt. And she was the one handing them the money. Her parents need to be held accountable. They went up in the courtroom crying and sobbing about Diddy, but they raised this girl. They ain't give her no morals.
I mean, his attorneys are arguing that these convictions are actually unconstitutional and that what he's been accused of, actually, it wasn't even prostitution. They said he didn't make any money off of this. The escorts chose to travel for these freak-offs voluntarily, and he didn't intend for them to have sex with him. Any merit here?
I do think so, without question, Laura. Look, you have a Mann Act prosecution that would not have been prosecuted independently of the other acts. And let's face it, the RICO charge was a stretch by any measure of the imagination, which allowed all of this other evidence to be brought in that should not have been brought in. And that evidence being brought in, he's an arsonist, he's burning cars, he's dangling people off of balconies, he's doing all of these things in terms of, getting these home equity loans from the mother of Cassie Ventura. None of that would have come in. And so if you look at just the actual Mann Act statute, there was no commercial purpose here in terms of what money he made. He wasn't doing this for a monetary purpose. He was not, in addition, enjoying or engaging in any sexual activity himself. He was, in essence, acting as a voyeur.
Diddy is in jail for having a good time, having fun with his family and friends, drinking, smoking, doing what broke people do. But he had money to do it even bigger. He paid people to fulfill their fantasies. That's something that I've never heard of in my life. He's in jail for being too nice, being too generous. And for all you people out there that's too nice and wonder why you always get a foot in your ass, maybe that's the reason why. Maybe being too nice is not the way. Maybe being too nice is what's gonna get you in trouble. If he was mean to people, if he told Cassie to go out there and get a job, your music suck. When she got booed off the stage, he should have told her, I don't want nothing to do with you. Young lady, you ain't got the talent. I don't give a damn what that head game do. You're not going to be able to freak your way off into a life of luxury. But Diddy being Diddy, somehow, some way, helped her out, gave her money, and she stabbed him in the back. Now we all trying to figure out, what did he do wrong? They say it was voyeurism, as if that's something that rich men don't do.
And
Well,
so
that
if you put all that
voyeurism
together,
is the enjoyment, though. Hold on. I'm not saying that I know this personally. I'm just saying to you, the enjoyment factor for voyeurs is actually watching this. That's a sexual pleasure.
Yes, it is. And guess what? That's not prostitution. Prostitution is the engaging in the sexual activity yourself. And many of the states upon which, they're charging this interstate commerce do not in and of themselves deem that to be prostitution. And so I think they're very compelling arguments. Who knows, to Elisa's point, whether this particular judge says, hey, these are, in fact, arguments I'll accept. But I think down the line, there's a universe in which Diddy could be cleared of everything.
At least we all remember in law school that one Supreme Court case where they say, I'll know porn when I see it. I'll know it when I see it. Well, the argument they're raising right now about the First Amendment concerns is that this is really protected by the First Amendment. I guess the amateur pornography he's talking about in some way. What do you make of the fact that they're leaning into this argument now? And keeping in mind, of course, you can bring in things in the sentencing phase that you didn't have to actually prove at trial because it wasn't your burden as the defense to prove your innocence.
That's right. I mean, once again, they're making this argument in an attempt to not even get to the sentencing phase. They want the acquittal. And listen, they've got to shoot their shot, right? I mean, the the defense is doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is trying to have Combs cleared of all charges. Now, with respect to this argument, Again, I think it fails with respect to this being pornography. You said amateur pornography, amateur anything by definition usually means there is not an element of payment. That's what separates amateur from professional. And the whole issue here is that Combs did pay these escorts, right? There is no question that there was a monetary transaction. The question is, why was there that monetary transaction? I think there's also questions, were all of the freak-offs filmed, right? Did the escorts know that they were being paid for their acting services rather than sex for money? Because again, I think the evidence at trial said these escorts were being hired to have sex with Combs's girlfriends. And so I think there's a lot of factual questions here that are going to go into that analysis. And, you know, I'm sure Joey would disagree with me being the defense attorney. I'm a defense attorney now, but I was a prosecutor for a long time. But I think this argument fails, but I think it is an argument to advance. And there is some case law that says pornography is protected First Amendment activity.
Joey, do you disagree?
The argument carries the day, Elise. Here's the reason why. First of all, pornography is a thing, right? And that thing is protected by the First Amendment. You have consenting adults who are engaging in this activity, whether you enjoy it or not enjoy it. It's certainly First Amendment protected. They talked about Diddy in terms of he was orchestrating everything. He was making sure the lighting was there, the baby oil was there, the movements were there. That's certainly protected under the First Amendment. He has a right in terms of doing that. And so at the end of the day, you can make the argument, as they have, I think very brilliantly, that this is a First Amendmentally protected issue and it should not have been prosecuted in any circumstance. And as a result of that, again, there's a universe where not this judge, but hey, maybe this judge, but if you appeal it and it goes up, the reality is that he could get off of everything.
While I wait a text from my mother about why I know what voyeurism is, I'll say thank you to both of you. Thank you.
I feel partially responsible for all this nonsense that's going on with Diddy. I cracked a whole lot of jokes about that man, and somehow the mainstream media got a hold of it and made it their own thing. They always take it from the ghetto and then make it mainstream and don't want to give a brother $1. They owe me $1 billion for all this stuff that been going on with Diddy, man. It was all jokes, entertainment. And now they realizing that it was nothing but a spoof because he's sitting in jail and don't nobody even know why he up in there. I told y'all, everything I say is alleged allegations and speculations for entertainment purposes. Ain't none of this stuff real. But there's always some idiots out there willing to believe any and everything that they hear on the internet. It was meant to be funny. They took a joke and turned it into reality, and now it's a joke again, and they trying to figure out what they gonna do to get this man out of jail. I just can't call it, man. Everything you heard in this video about Diddy getting knocked out is alleged allegations, speculations for entertainment purposes. Somebody said he FaceTimed his family from jail after getting knocked out in the shower. Somebody gonna believe it, but I'm trying to tell y'all not to believe it, man. I got so much love for myself. And make sure y'all do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Yo, I'm gonna holla at y'all on the next video. You know you want to, you might as well subscribe. You know you want to, you might as well subscribe. You know you want to, you might as well subscribe. You know you want to, you might as well subscribe. You know you want to, you might as well subscribe. You know you want to, you might as well subscribe. You know you want to, you might as well subscribe. You know you want to, you might as well subscribe.